Have you ever wanted to read Spider-Man but never knew where to start? Yeah, me too. But you're in luck, because I've got some really good news for you. Spider-Man comics for a long time have been a complicated mess, with a lot of the modern stories either just retelling or tripping over past stories for better or worse. In most cases, it's for the worst. But there's a glimmer of hope, a light at the end of the tunnel. Marvel Entertainment recently announced that after their Ultimate Invasion storyline is done, that they will be rebooting the Ultimate Universe, creating brand new #1s, including, that's right, Ultimate Spider-Man. They're kickstarting it with a brand new Spider-Man run, and this just won't be any Spider-Man run, this will be a complete reboot. But before we discuss what this could potentially entail, let's look at why the Spider-Man comics needed a reboot in the first place. Now, I don't really read Marvel comics, I'm just going to be completely honest with you. Call me a fraud, but I'm not really interested in any other characters other than Spider-Man. That's kind of how it's always been for me. I like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but apart from that, I don't really read or divulge into any other Marvel character other than Spider-Man. And that's how it forever will be. But I won't be talking all too much about Ultimate Invasion and what that comic storyline entails in this video. However, I will be talking about the knock-on effect that the Ultimate Invasion storyline will have, including Ultimate Spider-Man. And I'll also be discussing, in my opinion, why I think this reboot even exists in the first place. As you've probably seen, maybe even from watching my videos on this channel before, the Spider-Man comics are an absolute shambles. As I mentioned, one of their main issues is that they end up tripping over each other all too often, retelling and rehashing the same concepts time and time again. And this is a product of Marvel wanting to keep Peter Parker closer to the status quo of the 60s. A young, relatable teenage superhero that audiences like myself or younger could relate to. And that's what keeps the comic book selling. Or that's what they think keeps them selling. I bet you wouldn't believe me if I told you that Peter Parker in the current comics is actually pushing 30 years old. In fact, I think he might actually be 30. That's kind of weird. Because he acts so much like a teenager. Marvel constantly and consistently are trying to knock him back to being this teenage superhero. However, this poses a massive problem. The only reason the comics are so popular nowadays is because they're really bad. They're pretty bad. They're a controversial hot topic, if you will, that people discuss and talk about how they should be changing. That's the only thing that's keeping this 616 run going at this point in time. People just constantly talking about how the editorial needs to change, how poorly written they are, and how the characters don't evolve. When you look back at Peter's life in the comics, it's almost like he made no progress whatsoever, which is the main issue with the current run of Spider-Man comics. He isn't married, he doesn't have a stable job, and yeah, you could say that's all a part of being Spider-Man and the sacrifice that he has to make, but I'd argue that after a while, that makes the character boring. And in the end, you want the character that you followed for so long, the character that you've been relating to all of these years, to eventually turn out okay. To get the girl, to make the money, and to end up living a normal life. That's what we all want for Peter Parker, right? In the end, we want him to win. All the hardships that he goes through, he has to win in the end, right? Well, according to Marvel editorial, he don't. He don't ever win. Either way, without this being a philosophical breakdown of the Spider-Man character as a whole, the comics just aren't doing it for me anymore, and plenty of you guys who are watching this video probably feel the same way. So what do you do when there's nowhere to go? You just reboot the character. Now, I have to make it clear that the 616 universe will still continue to exist, and it probably will continue to exist for the rest of time. But if you've ever wondered why Spider-Man and other Marvel characters alike are so hard to read and so hard to get on board with, it's because they're consistently referencing or trying to hop around other stories to tell new ones. And to new readers, it's just alienating. For example, if you've never read a comic book in your entire life and you try to read Spider-Man, which if you're watching this video, I assume you have at some point, I bet you found it really difficult, because I did too. I've tried to read multiple Spider-Man stories before by just hopping in at different points in the comics history, but every single time I'm like, I have no idea what's going on here. Like, I just don't. You have to really read some of the niche stories to understand a lot about what happens in the comics nowadays, but the issue is, it took me a few years to really figure out where those niche stories were and what I should be reading. I'm currently up to date with everything in the comic run. I know everything that's happened before, and I know that roughly where the comics are going to go in the future. But to someone that's never read a comic before, they're not going to know that. They're not going to know all of this information. However, with a fresh take on the character, most of you who have never read a comic before can just hop in and enjoy the character and the stories right from the start without having to know loads of information prior to reading the book. I also think we're at a point in time where Spider-Man has kind of lost his identity a little. I have always been an advocate that I think stories about Peter's later years are way more interesting than sending him back to high school, but the more that I read, watch, play, and just divulge into Spider-Man media, I notice a very, very striking pattern. The character is lost. The character doesn't know what it is anymore. Comics tell outrageously bad Spider-Man stories. The MCU has taken him in multiple directions that I think are very alien to what the comic was in the first place. And even the Insomniac games, despite being really well written, are way too techy for my liking. They're all adaptations, and there's nothing wrong with an adaptation, but maybe we need to dial it back a bit and re-understand what made the wall crawler so special and so simple in the first place. And that's what I hope this new Ultimate Spider-Man run does. So that begs the question, will it be good? Well, the book is written by Jonathan Hickman, and Jonathan Hickman is a very modern comic book writer. Like I said, I don't really read comics, but Jonathan Hickman, off the top of my head, did books like Secret Wars from 2015, and he also had a crack at the Ultimates, which were the Ultimate Universe's version of the Avengers as well. And those books, despite not being upheld as some of the greatest comics, are often labelled as still very influential when it came to their effect and knock-on effect for the comics coming afterwards. Like, for example, the Ultimates was a massive inspiration for the MCU's Avengers. Like, without the Ultimates and without the Ultimate Universe's version of the Avengers, the MCU Avengers probably wouldn't be the same. So it's fair that he knows what he's doing. He's written comics before, and he's definitely an experienced writer. He's also written a bunch of X-Men stuff as well, but I've never read any of that, so I really can't comment. So yeah, he's written comics, but how would Jonathan Hickman handle Spider-Man? Do we know? Well, we actually do. So a bunch of you are probably thinking, okay, yeah, we do because he wrote him partially in Secret Wars. But no, he actually wrote him somewhere else as well. Jonathan Hickman actually wrote Spider-Man once, not just in Secret Wars, but by himself. Apart from his stint in Secret Wars, like we mentioned, Hickman wrote a very personal Spider-Man story. In the Amazing Fantasy issue 1000, Annual saw an anthology of Spider-Man stories written by several writers celebrating the character as a whole. We saw many different takes on Spider-Man, some being really classical, but also some being really weird as well. But out of all of the stories that were told in this issue, Hickman's was by far the best. Hickman wrote a story about Peter Parker who goes to the Spider-Verse looking for advice as to why everything is going wrong in his life. His life as Spider-Man is so miserable, and Peter just wants to understand why. He wants someone else in the Spider-Verse to understand the pain that he is going through. At first, the Spider-Men mess with him, saying that their lives are perfect, and tell Peter that he probably should just hang up the suit. However, after some resilience from Peter, the Spider-Men reveal that no, none of their lives are actually anywhere near perfect, and Peter is just another one in a long line of Spider-Men and women that have imperfect lives. And it's a sweet story about no matter how much Spider-Man tries to do the right thing, his life will always have consequences. And Peter takes comfort in this. He returns to New York with the same problems, the same issues, and the same worries, but he's happy that at least someone out there in the multiverse just gets it. It's not the deepest, most complex, or riveting Spider-Man story ever told, but it's simple and it works. Just as Peter learns that other people out there in the universe get his pain, Hickman just gets it. And that's what I like. Someone that fundamentally understands the struggles of Spider-Man. Hickman clearly is a writer that understands and also appreciates the struggles that Spider-Man has, the consequences that come along with that character. He understands that Spider-Man isn't perfect. He understands that Spider-Man will always have obstacles in his way, no matter how big or how small or how large or how personal. And I think that if Jonathan Hickman takes that mentality and applies it to Ultimate Spider-Man, it's going to make it an absolutely fantastic book. And maybe in years' time, we're looking back at this thinking, hey, that Ultimate Spider-Man wasn't that great. But at least we have a new hope, and I'm very hopeful. Hickman seems to know what he's doing, and hopefully it'll be a great series. The series starts January 2024, so obviously, as you know, we're going to be doing updates on this channel, and I will be reviewing the first issue when it comes out. And make sure you're subscribed. Also, we're trying to push to 50,000 subscribers, so I'd really appreciate it if you can push us to that goal. That would be absolutely awesome. As a community, we're growing every single day. I appreciate all the love and support that you guys give me. With that being said, thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Take care, and peace.